We have next another lightning talk featuring some great thermodynamic ideas, I think, unless the title has changed too much.
No, it is.
Excellent, excellent. So our next talk is from Jonathan Salmerón-Hernández on liquid crystal modeling, thermodynamics, and numerical methods. And hopefully it will be up here in just a moment. Wonderful. Take it away.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm actually currently I'm a postdoc at New York University, but most of the work I'm going to present was performed during my PhD studies at the University of Chicago under the advisement of Professor Juan de Pablo. So pretty much I'm going to introduce you to liquid crystal GLBT. I'm going to let you know what these letters stand for later, but it's pretty much to model liquid crystals, and I hope you will find it very entertaining. First of all, what are liquid crystals? Okay, liquid crystals are a state of matter that you can find everywhere. So it's not like a very magical stuff. Like, it's pretty much something that is in between a solid and a liquid, right? So for instance, like a solid has very well perfect aligned orientation. However, liquids are very more like random, like normal water. So liquid crystals are something in between. As you can see in the image, I hope everyone watched Finding Nemo because it's one of my favorite movies. But in that movie, we can see that when fish as directions, they actually flow naturally like any other liquid that also have some degree of orientation when they point into an arrow. So this is actually a liquid crystal state, but we can also find it in some other instances, like most of you have a liver and hope, and that is actually a living liquid crystal because the cells can flow but have orientation. And also, we have other technologies like LCD screens, which stands for liquid crystal display. And also cell membranes because they have orientation, but also flow. So these are liquid crystals. They're everywhere, and most of the examples that I'm going to show, I compare with actual experiments. All of them are liquid crystals, so don't think of them like something strange. All right, so how do I actually model? I actually model liquid crystals with a mathematical approach. First, I need two things. First, the first thing is a vector, which tells us the direction of the liquid crystal. So they're pointing in average in one specific direction. Secondly, I need a number, which is the order parameter. So it tells me how ordered the liquid crystal is. If it's 0, it's pretty much like a normal water, but if it's 1, it's almost a perfect crystal. So with these two entities, I multiply the director vector, and then I get a matrix or also a tensor, right? This is actually the information. The Q tensor is the actual mathematical entity that contains all the information about the liquid crystals. So this is actually the thing that I need to evolve in time to actually achieve my simulations. So most of the current research is done by actually solving that differential equation, which is the Lattice-Boltzmann equation. However, that equation has a problem, which is that is clearly missing a concentration dependence. As I don't know if you're a cook, if you like to cook or not, I hate cooking, but I think when you have to bake something, you need to know the amount of ingredients, like how many eggs, how much milk, how many other flours. So actually concentration, the quantity that we need to have to actually achieve the experiment and to actually produce new technologies is actually important. So most of my research is actually deriving how do we integrate into the Lattice-Boltzmann equation the concentration component as a dynamical variable. Unfortunately, I don't really have time to go through this equation or the derivation, but I will let you know how to find it later. But we pretty much use thermodynamics or non-equilibrium thermodynamics through a generic framework. That's the G, like at the beginning of my the name of my code is G of generic. So that's the generic framework. And all these equations actually, the two first equations actually are used to model the flow or the velocity of the fluid or the velocity of the liquid. The third equation is, you can see there, is a phi. It's a phi evolving in time. So that's actually how the liquid crystal concentration is going to change on time because of the diffusion process. The fourth equation is a generalized version of Lattice-Boltzmann equations, how the Q tensor or the order is going to evolve in time. As you can see, I have split into energy and entropy. All right, but so the problem with that is like I have a bunch of differential equations, right? But I have a Q tensor, or I have a tensor, I have a matrix that I need to evolve in time. So most of the packages that we can find in Julia are actually usually thought to evolve scalars, just a number. So I actually need to change the architecture of DifferentialEquations.jl to be able to use my Q tensor. So I need to define first the structs As you can see there, I've defined the strokes. The first is the phi, which is the concentration. The second is the Q tensor, which is the liquid crystal information that has some property, mathematical properties. And the third is the F, which is for velocity. Then after that, I use a central difference because I have partial derivatives. I have a spatial derivatives that I need to actually change, discretize over space. And this is how it looks like. I put different tags for different operators, such as Laplacian, divergence, gradient. All of you I hope that you might be familiar with these concepts. And then this is how it looks like in the computational implementation. But something that I want to point out is that it's used for Laplacian, that it's in any kind of number. It could be a float, it could be a vector, it could be a matrix, it could be an array. So that's the difference that we did, the changes that we made. So we did the integration with finite differences.jl. And something that I think over this conference, something that everyone is pointing or everyone is highlighting, is that we want to see the equations that we write it in paper as we actually see it in the computer. So it's exactly the same situation, though I have different energies or entropies. And I hope that everyone can see that I have a Laplacian there operating over phi. And then I have this operator, which is the Laplacian there operating, and I had the result in my multiplication. Similarly, if you add all these different energies, we have a mu, which is the chemical potential, and then we also have, again, another Laplacian operator of a chemical potential. With that, we just simply use the same technology as the DifferentialEquations.jl, and then we are able to evolve in time this particular setup that you have seen probably everywhere. How does it look like? Well, that's for the concentration, but how does it look like when we evolve the Q tensor? So this is a three-dimensional simulation, and then this simulation was done by Suraj, who is a PhD student in my group, and he is the first acolyte of this package. And he was trying to understand what happens to the liquid crystal when we apply electric field. And the results are very neat. As you can see here, we start to form different patterns over three-dimensional space, which resembles quite nicely like the experimental information that we see here. He also added TensorOperators.jl because to handle the complex tensor multiplications. Next, what happens if we actually couple the Q tensor with the phi dynamics? Here I am introducing another experiment, which is actually liquid crystal droplets. You see that they are different, right? Instead of being spherical, they are more triangular. But also in the same way, we start with the spherical droplets and we evolve on time, and we also capable of achieving experimental results. The simulations looks also like experimental results. We also can add flow, as for instance here I have a liquid crystal droplet that is moving in a channel, right, under a parabolic flow, but also my simulations also can resemble under a parabolic flow these experimental features. However, something that is probably more of interest of everyone is like that velocity that I just showed has a constant velocity profile, but what happens if we actually want to add a flow that is chaotic? For instance, in a liquid crystal microtubule experiment that is based on proteins. These proteins actually transfer the chemical energy into mechanical work, right? Because they have, the glucose, all that we eat, and then when we put it outside a Petri box, we achieve a liquid crystal nematic phase that is also chaotic or is active because it's moving just because it has energy. Also, obviously, we couple the Q tensor with the velocity profile or the Navier-Stokes equation. We also achieve a similar result that we see in the experiment. We achieve this, and that's the reason I have LB, because with the Lattice Boltzmann method, which is just an algorithm that was found in Trixi.jl, which is the T in my liquid crystal GLBT. These people had already handled all these numerical methods, and they were very nice to also help us to integrate our finite differences with their finite elements, customize, and then couple all the equations together. Finally, which is probably more of interest, is like when we couple the 4 differential equations together, we achieve a numerical simulation that it tells us how ordered it is, how much it is, and how fast it goes. And this is actually to the best of my knowledge, the very first ever active lyotropic or concentration-dependent liquid crystal simulation, because as you could see, it was very hard to integrate all the differential equations all together. Which is nice because I hope that this can be used for later applications. So just to sum up, I presented the generic equations, which was based on thermodynamic, non-equilibrium thermodynamics. Then after that, I presented how we solve it with this package. that I hope it can be used for other differential equations, not only liquid crystals, other more complex differential equations, with the packages that we integrated. And then now that I am here, I saw different packages that I can use for modeling more complex scenarios, such as DIET, differential equations estimators, MPI for supercomputing. And I hope that all this helps us to actually probably achieve more complex simulations like artificial muscles, because you can see here that the muscles have like these elongated particles like a liquid crystal. All right, with that, I thank you very much. If you want to know more, please check my thesis. That's how I couple the questions, integrated, derived, everything. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe one quick question while the next speaker sets up. So, if you want to come up and get yourself plugged in here, if there's any quick audience questions. All right. If not, let's try to stay on time. We'll thank the speaker again. I think he'll be around afterwards if anything comes up.
So, I don't know.
So our next speaker is Qi Zhang. We'll be talking about accelerating Fermi operator expansion, ML-inspired methods.